got a long time to grow. I've got unfinished stories to be told. I've got a long, dusty road ahead of me.
Liberty from the angry mind. Liberty from the low life. Liberty from incivility. This is the Truth, Values, and Character Show.
All right, we're back. This is James Hake filling in for Jesse for just a few moments more. As I said, Jesse is out talking on interviews, but he will be back, so hang tight. And I have many very interesting callers, including Angela, who is living in a past that is very debatable and does not exist anymore, but she wants to blame whites for stealing the country from the Indians. Is that right? Angela, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm listening to you.
All right. So do you want to apologize for denigrating America?
I'm not apologizing for nothing. I didn't
think so.
say anything bad about America.
You did. Yes, you said that Americans stole the country from the Indians, which isn't true.
Did I say stole?
You said you said that the Indians were the first ones in this country, and this wasn't a country back then. The Indians did not create a country.
The real
whites
Americans are Indians.
No, they're not.
You don't know your history.
Actually, you don't know your history. But go on. Do you have an actual point?
I said what I had to say.
All right. In other words, you hate America, you hate white people, and you don't like the fact that Trump wants to protect Americans.
You are a damn liar.
You can't cuss.
That's what I'm sitting here and I'm looking, and you are a damn liar.
Okay.
La la la. And this is Toshan here doing the Lord's work as always. And as always, your lack of faith disturbs me. I'm joined today by a special guest, somebody who took some time out for me real quick too, so I'm super grateful for that. James Hake, producer of the Jesse Peterson Show and host of the Hake Report, Hake. And you're the producer of The Fallen State also?
I'm like a very distant, assistant producer. I give input now and then, but not really a proper producer. Kelly's the producer, the real one.
Kelly.
Yeah.
Okay. I've heard her name a couple times.
Yeah.
Cool. So again, man, thank you. I definitely appreciate you taking your time.
Yeah.
And I know I don't even have shows up for you to reference. So yeah, I appreciate that trust.
It's an honor to be here. I caught your piece on that man who was killed in the
Ken Bridges.
Yeah. That's a sad story. It was cool that you got his son there.
Yeah, man. We've actually been friends for a number of years. It turned out that he went to high school with my sister. So after I met him and we got cool, I learned that he was friends with my sister. So that made us
nice.
Even more tight. Yeah, man. Good friend of mine. Good guy. Good dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. His dad was phenomenal guy.
Yeah. He seemed like he really wanted to help people help themselves. And I really respect that.
Yeah, that was a super big thing. Like I said in the interview, it started to change my mind. It didn't wipe my anger away, but it definitely made me feel more, I became more willing to think outside of violent answers. And it, as I said in that interview, kind of culminated. It's culminating this year for me. And it was during that time that I discovered Jesse. I was studying, I had a philosophy class and I studied Zoroastrianism. And I was actually studying Nietzsche. And then on my own, I studied Zarathustra. I learned about the angry mind is their duality is called the wise mind and the angry mind. And I totally got sucked down that rabbit hole right around the same time YouTube started to suggest Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
And so I dug into Jordan Peterson, and then Jesse Peterson started to be suggested. And here I am.
Nice. That's
Yeah,
cool, man.
So, yeah, that anger thing that Jesse talks about all the time is super significant. So, let me ask you too, because I don't see myself up here. Am I looking at you right now, or?
You know, I don't see your picture, but
okay. So
it's better for you. Sometimes that works better for us.
Yeah, I'm gonna just look at my camera over here then, and
okay.
But I'm just trying to get the layout in my head. Yep. So go ahead, man. Is there anything you wanted to say, or?
Well,
I've just been running my mouth.
This month, we're coming towards the end of White History Month, which is something I really appreciate Jesse Peterson for. Mm-hmm. And a few years ago, Jesse also gave the second Emancipation Proclamation for white people, freeing them from the fear of speaking up for fear of being called racist. And that was something that I really appreciated him for as well. And people think of that as not being a serious thing. They think of it as either like trolling or trying to expose a double standard. And it's so much deeper than that, because there is a true fear, and fear is worse. Fear is a worse spiritual condition to have than any physical condition that you have. Say you're in prison, but you have lost your fear. You are you've become a real living being, you know, you've become like a child of God. That is better, in all honesty. And I mean, I imagine that that's better than living as a so-called free man, like all of us are, being spoiled by the present day reality of America. But living in fear and being enslaved to like sin, basically. So I really appreciate that, because there is definitely like a mental problem among most whites, probably all whites. I mean, every human being really, but there's a phenomenon of this thing called race, where white people fall into a mentality, black people fall into a mentality, Asians, Hispanic, well, the various Hispanic cultures and all that.
Right.
We all have, because we come from families, our families are screwed up, and then the culture is screwed up because of all the families that are screwed up, and they're screwed up in kind of unique ways. The root is all the same, I think, you know, that anger, but the symptoms are very different. Like currently in the black culture, there's a lot of, like what you mentioned before, violence, and that outright anger, which is people halfway respect the fact that blacks are willing to speak up, like whether they're right or wrong, they speak their mind. So many of them, but so many whites have the opposite problem. I mean, blacks speak out in anger, but they speak out at least. Whites are afraid to speak out, and that's another evil. You know, that's it's doing a disservice to everybody. It's doing a disservice to white children, to the whites themselves. You know, it's doing a disservice to me when I do not speak up when I should. It's doing a disservice to the person who's wrong, who you're not calling out for them being wrong. You know, it's Jesse makes the point. He truly cares about the black community more than anybody I know, and he says the blacks are not getting truth anywhere, and that is so true, because 70-something% are raised by single mothers. The ones who are together, many of them say, okay, I don't want racism to be an excuse, but they still believe in it, and it's still a common theme. Like, it's such a common theme that the term Uncle Tom is actually a common term, and that's a reference to slavery. That's an indication that you're still thinking about slavery. And whites have this, it's like blacks have a point that whites do hate blacks because whites have a secret judgment on them and they cannot tell them the truth for the life of them. And it is hate when you are unwilling to tell somebody plainly what you think. And so,
and that's one of the biggest issues I see with the left, white people on the left in particular. They are almost always so condescending.
Yeah.
And I hate it. It's not helpful at all. I know lots of young men who have graduated high school. I work with some of these young men myself, and they read, not all, but a lot of them read on 7th, 8th grade level graduating high school.
Yeah. Some
lower than that. And, that's no exaggeration. So I believe when we're dealing with, a phenomenon like, this late reading thing or this literacy issue, there's not even any room to talk about these subtle supposed racial nuances and this kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's things more urgent.
Absolutely. So when you brought up White History Month, and happy White History Month, by the way.
Thank you. You as well.
Yeah, thank you. I have I'm not gonna say always, that's a lie. I've been saying for a number of years, maybe 5 years now, that I think white men in particular, should be way more vocal about their loss of rights. I've actually been saying that white people do not have the same rights in this country as other groups of people. Mm-hmm. So I'm very confused about the whole white privilege idea. I mean, I'm not so confused that I don't get where it originates.
Yeah.
But I really don't think that in general white people have freedom of speech. And everything follows from freedom of speech and freedom of expression. What do you think about the people who say, though, that every day is White History Month, or we're learning white history every day? And I've heard what Jesse said about it. What do you think?
Well, I think that every day is anti-White History Month. Most people are learning this. I don't know if it originated in like communist mindset, but everybody knows that the academics have been, you can call it infiltrated, or just they're consumed by liberals and leftists and really anti-American thought, anti-white American, anti-Christian American thought. And so we're taught that, so many people are taught that Christopher Columbus was a genocider and a rapist and all those things. And it's so bad that I don't know what's true, but I know that they are just brushing aside what he did. And he did something that's noteworthy, and they basically, all these people are thinking that they know better than the people who instituted Columbus Day.
Right.
And they're thinking that they are better people than Christopher Columbus. And in reality, I think that all these people, Robert E. Lee was, from all accounts, from everybody that I respect who knows about Robert E. Lee's history, he was a good man. He was a very honorable man, and that's why he was respected by North and South.
Yeah.
And for them to like want to take down his statue, write Black Lives Matter on, and throw paint and everything, they're not better human beings than he was. He is actually a better man than they were. Yeah. But there's this smear campaign upon white history and white people today that totally disproves the notion that every day is White History Month. Yes, you do see every president or whatever leading up to now has been white, and the whites are dominating politics, I guess. But that doesn't mean there are many whites who are anti-white, just as there are many blacks who are anti-black, even though they may pretend to be pro-black.
Right.
It's basically comes down to good versus evil. But because there are white people in existence, there are black people in existence, and there is this focus on race, we need to tell the truth to the situation. If people want to be, the reality is human beings are shallow, and this stuff matters to us. What we look like and everything else, it matters. And in a sense, it truly does matter, at least in this life, because Jesse made the point that if human beings were normal, in a normal state of being, they would not interracially marry. And he makes a good point, because that's when you go outside of the race, you're kind of rejecting your own parents.
Your own.
And
Right,
it signifies something is wrong. I mean, in general, you're getting married in the wrong state of being anyways. So I'm not saying that somebody who goes same race marriage is necessarily going to have a better marriage than the interracial marriage. Once it's done, you stick with it and you live it out and you overcome the challenges. You're bringing upon more challenges upon yourself. And what you said about the freedom of speech, I think it's both de facto and de jure freedom of speech, meaning that there are so many judges who are very liberal, and so they deem people as being racially profiling. For example, Sheriff Joe Arpaio. There are liberal activist judges who basically persecuted him.
Yeah.
And then there is the de facto anti-freedom of speech, where an old man like Donald Sterling can't tell his mistress or whatever kind of disgusting man he may be because of, having a mistress, or apparently it was a mistress, I don't know. But he has that right to express his wishes for the woman who's his assistant or whatever she is. And he has that right. And to me, it was so wrong to take away his team. And with the point that he was making was hinting at the truth that there is, that there can be a jealousy. He's almost right to be jealous if she's his mistress of her being around black guys, or and also like the image that so many black people have. The image is, there are a lot of reasons for him to have a negative stereotype or a negative mindset or attitude toward the image of black people being around his girl. And or even if he totally wasn't justified, he has that right, and they shouldn't have taken away his team.
Right. Yeah, that's more where I stand on it. I stand there with all of these issues, whether or not do people have a right to it? Do they uphold their responsibilities, the responsibilities that go along with those rights? And that's their personal responsibility, not their responsibility to make me feel good.
Right.
Just if they do that, that's what I consider liberty.
Yeah, because everything else is fake. It's enforced. You can't enforce love for fellow human beings. You can't.
Right.
It's impossible. And that's how you build love, by letting people hate.
Yeah. Well, people are liars. And I've just been saying that more and more, that there is a culture of a human culture of truth, and there's a culture of just lying, things that are not based on reality. And I'm sure there's some crazy tribe in the Amazon somewhere that's like totally nuts. So I don't think this is peculiar to Western culture or anything like that, but that there's just for lack of a better terminology, a lying spirit that is just prevalent and is just spread generation after generation. Even people's personalities are lies. They have no idea who they are at all. They're just they make up these personalities based on these foolish conclusions that their parents come to, or that they come to over the years, and then they feed that to their children, and it just goes on and on and on, and everybody is so proud of their pretend selves.
That's why I like the name of your show, by the way, Truth, Values, and Character Show, because it's kind of a wake-up call that we need. It's an indication that there's a lack of these things. There's a lack of truth and values and character in the American culture. Yeah,
absolutely. And I don't think I came up with that. The way I feel, like God gave it to me. I really would have gone for something a little sexier but when I heard it in my head, it was not hear it, but it just made sense to me for that reason. And I was so comfortable, even if it wasn't sexy.
Yeah. There's one thing I gotta get off my chest about White History Month.
Yeah.
If we can restore whites, especially white men, to the greatness that the old guys had. Yeah. Like Sheriff Joe Arpaio, I talked about on my show, and Donald Trump, I talked about a little bit. Those guys are old school. They speak their mind. They're just plain. They're real. Yeah. And I imagine that the people in the past had so much character. I mean, one of our interns, actually, he works with us now. Travis, he did a feature on General George S. Patton, and he talked about all the crazy but tough things that he did and went through. If we can come back to that type of greatness, then we will have less of a hole in society, because the weakness of whites is dragging everybody down. It's allowing everybody to slide. And it's the same as what happened with the black culture. When we allowed the black culture to slide, we should have not allowed that to happen. In the old days, white men were the a-holes who would be like, "What are you doing?" Like, they would call you out, and you'd be like mad at them. Like, I was a young kid, I'd be called out by like an old a-hole white guy. And, this was the common theme. They were oftentimes called racist because they would have these stereotypes that happened to be, for the most part, true. But they would call things out. And there are old school black guys, and some women too, I think, that call people out when they're wrong. And we need to we need to return to that among whites, among blacks, and everything, because when whites didn't speak up because they were being called racist just for calling out the negative black culture, that hurt the whites, and the whites are sliding down along with the blacks now. Rather than being like, no, come back to character and moral and truth, moral values and truth. We just allowed, like I said, it's a total disservice. And it's good for all Americans of all races when whites are great. When whites have that greatness of spirit that Trump and Arpaio and the historical figures who were great have that, when they have that, and when that's dominant and when that's respected.
Absolutely. Can you tell me, man, this time went so fast.
No worries, man.
Okay, cool. Okay, so since I have a little bit of time, let me go back a little bit. How did you get involved with Bond?
So I got a tip about Bond when I was traveling. I was visiting old college roommates up in the Pacific Northwest, and I came across somebody who said, "Hey, you're in Los Angeles, you should check out Jesse Peterson. He is really excellent on spiritual stuff." And so I came to a meeting 2007, and he didn't happen to be there. There was another guy there. There were other men leading the church service. It was a Sunday service. And one of the men stood up. It was Patrick Rooney. And he basically kind of called out the people for not showing up because they knew that Jesse wasn't going to be there. And he said, there's always something to learn. And I kind of liked that, that he called people out. And then this other guy who has been a faithful, long-time, big supporter of Bond, Kent, was running the meeting. And he was just, calling people out, being honest and being direct and having a conversation. And it was just, it was refreshing on two levels. One was the truth of it, the no excuse mindset. And the other was the fact that men were leading. In so many churches that I've been to and that I've attended, women have come to start to take over, and they're not even necessarily feminist women, but it's like the men are beaten down and shy and insecure and stuff like that, and the women are kind of leading. She's the boss. I hear that that's a white thing, and it may well be, and it's a big problem among whites. It may be across a lot of cultures, but the women being the boss in the churches is it's a turnoff, and it just seemed right that that Bond was rebuilding the family by rebuilding the man. So that's how I started coming to church. I started attending rallies and protests, started volunteering for the church services, and then I eventually got invited to be producer for his radio show, and they trained me, and that's how it happened.
Got you. What does making America great again mean to you?
It means what I referenced before, where for me, it means not just restoring the political insanity, but restoring the moral, restoring away from the political insanity. It's restoring the moral sanity. Trump is like an old school guy, and he just tells the truth. He's a real guy, and he's not a politician, but he is a politician. You know what I mean? Like he's like, he stood out among that body of 17 Republicans when he 100%. At the first, from the very first debate, he just stood out, and that was what sold me on him, and that's what I think of when I think of making America great again, is each of us returning to strength of character and truth and fearlessness like Trump has. And Trump has come a long way, because I don't think he was ready in 2012. I think that he built a great life, and yes, he definitely had some moral failings along the way, but he's really come along, and he has a strength of resolve and character and not backing down that I truly appreciate. That is so refreshing.
It really is. I believe that Trump's ascendancy is definitely part of the time, if I can say it that way, that it was destined almost. And I realized that, and I don't know if he's aware of this or not, but to me, the biggest problem, you mentioned academia earlier, and I think that since the late 60s, the biggest problem with the United States of America has been that it has a branding problem. And I think that's why capitalism has a bad brand. And I think that this whole white devil, the white devil caricature was given to Uncle Sam, let's say, and that I really believe that because the Black Panther Party were they were not just loud, but they were cool, really powerful visually. Very cool. And I think it's so underrated, the impact of cool in the culture and the amount of cool that the Black Panther Party had. I really believe, actually, that that's very much at the root of what's going on the campuses. What did I start out saying?
That is so true.
About
if I can interrupt.
Go ahead.
That's why, that just really graphic propaganda. Che Guevara is like it's a great image. He's probably an evil man, but it's a great image. That black and red communism thing. It's very powerful visual propaganda. And I think that's why Trump has been successful too, because he had that coolness. He had that, it was a different kind of cool. It was like his own type of cool, because he's as cool as he can be as a 70-year-old white man. But he's totally himself, unabashed, and he has this "Make America Great Again," and he has these simple names for people. He brands people. Low
He's a
IQ
branding
vaccine.
master.
Yeah.
That's what he does, and so he's in the process of this. I really believe he's rebranding America.
Yeah.
And I think all in all things are on the up and up.
Yeah.
I do feel like we're in a type of civil war right now, but that in terms of history, it's a way better civil war than our last civil war. So that's how I'm looking at it. And, I pray that I'm correct about that.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah.
It's a curious thing. Like, you think of all the people, there were, were there hundreds of thousands of people who died in the Civil War? I don't know.
Hundreds of thousands.
So I wonder what the difference is between those numbers, and the numbers who are dying, who have been dying for the past several decades, with the rise in crime, the rise in abortion, the rise in all of, the rise in there's a lot of moral decline and violence and murder and killing of unborn children that I wonder how the numbers compare. I mean, granted, we're a much bigger country, but there is a type of civil war. Thankfully, it's not hundreds of thousands of people dying in battle, but it's really like, it's a spiritual war, and it's a mimetic war, kind of like what you said. The Black Panthers, the Black Power stuff, those are powerful images. They're very appealing.